Okay, well then, I will go ahead and call this meeting, the September 24th, 2020 Ad hoc Bluffton Growth Committee meeting to order. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand, and I think Molly has a flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
And I believe so the next item is the approval of the agenda for today. However, I believe there is a correction to the minutes that are being approved. Received an email from Robin that said that the item D, approval of the June 25th, 2020 committee meeting minutes, is actually the July 23rd, 2020 meeting minutes. So, Dick, if you could make a motion to make that correction. Oops, I think you're muted.
You're muted.
I move we approve the July 23rd, 2020 minutes.
We make the change to the agenda, that item D.
Oh, okay. Approve of the June 25th, 2020?
Yes.
Yes, I move that we approve the June 25, 2020 committee minutes.
Sorry. We need to change item D on the agenda to be the July 23rd, 2020 minutes. Those are the minutes that we are approving.
I so move.
Thank you. Sorry, Molly, did you get that?
Did you want to change that date and then approve the agenda, or do it all at once? I'm sorry.
No, I want to, I have to correct the agenda to reflect that the July 23rd minutes are the minutes that are being approved today. For a change to the agenda.
Motion to change the June 25th, 2020 to July 23rd, 2020.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Second it.
For the vote in board doc.
Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. I'm not seeing it in board docs, so mine might be acting a little. Oh, you're putting it in manually?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's
okay.
Easy.
Just making sure everything's correct.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Okay, now I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And do we have any public comments today?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So seeing no public comments, we'll move to approve the July 23rd.
I move we approve the July 23rd, 2020 minutes.
Okay, second.
Unanimous, good.
Very good. Did that save?
Yes, ma'am. Is everything correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Fantastic. So moving along to item E, which is the discussion of mobiles. So I believe, Carol and Robert, you all were trying to gather some information relative to the lifespan of the mobiles, cost of use, and and whatnot. And Dick, please correct me if there's any other data points that we were collecting on that. But I guess who's going to take that?
I think Robert's going to take that. Molly, if you will open up that PDF, there is a slide on there that should sort of just keep scrolling through. Right there.
All right. So we did ask Hiri, who, as you know, is our assistant program manager for the referendum. We asked them to do some cost estimating. There is a larger spreadsheet that supports this. This is the summary of the calculations. For the most part, you see they're looking at a 675 square foot classroom, just one classroom, which is a small classroom. Recognize that that is on the close to a modular size classroom. Any of our new construction would be larger. So that's one advantage of new construction over modulars that we're not considering here. But this is just based on per square foot cost of new construction. They did use our costs here in Beaufort County that we've seen on some of our recent projects. So the current cost, as they show there for new construction of a 675 square foot classroom, would be $219,767. That comes to about $325 a square foot. That's about what we're budgeting for now for new construction. The 60% cost for upgrades and renovations over a lifespan, see the 131,000. They asked me what I thought of this, and to be honest, I didn't really have a good feel myself for this, although our goal as a district is to spend about 2% of our overall asset value for upgrades. That's a recommendation from a national group, is somewhere in the 2 to 4%. We try to get to the 2%, and we hardly ever get there. We're more like a 1.5%, and we do have some extra expenses on there. So if you look at, we like to be in the 1.25 to 1.5% for 50 years. It gets very close to 60%. So I now see where they got that. That I came from a different approach, but we get close to that same number. So and then they have some energy costs that they got from our maintenance department on an annual basis. And so you see your total cost there, $382,678 over a 50-year lifespan of one classroom. They did the same thing for a modular, based it on some of our recent modular pricing. You see it is less. That comes to just under $200 a square foot. And I do have to say that is what we are experiencing with modulars. In the last few years, OSF's requirements for modulars are pretty much the same as new construction. So that means their energy requirements for HVAC and fire and all of our technology is the same. So we've really seen modular costs over the last 5 to 10 years creep up. And this brings it to just under $200 a square foot, which I would say is not too unrealistic. I've said used to be that modulars were less than half the cost of new construction, but we can't say that anymore. They're getting closer and closer to the cost of new construction, and that's what they're showing here. So instead of having all the upgrades, they're doing 2 building replacements. So that's saying that modular classrooms should last about 17 years. That's realistic. I would say we typically say modulars lifespan is in the 10 to 15 year range, which Carol and I are trying to figure out what our oldest modular is out there right now. And actually, I didn't find it out. I meant to look it up. At Beaufort High, we have some modulars that are in the 15 plus year range, but they, of course, they're not being used as classrooms anymore, and we wouldn't use them as classrooms. They're used as storage. So I agree then with them as well. And matter of fact, they're probably a little conservative here, saying you can get 17 years out of a modular. So with that, you see your subtotal cost of 360,656. The energy costs, they did an inflate energy a little bit, just that the modular buildings are not as energy efficient. And you see a slightly higher cost over 50 years for modular at $396,431. So they're close to the same price, I guess. You see there's only a 13,000 difference. And of course, your utility of what you get out of that same price, I think we'd all agree that a regular building is a better classroom space than a modular. So, any questions on that?
I got a few, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
2 building replacements over 50 years. My math says that's 25 years each.
No, it'd be, you got the original, then 2 replacements. So it's 3 total modulars over 50 years.
Yeah, so that, okay.
So that's the difference.
Yeah, but your model shows 2.
You have the first,
But you got the first calculated in there,
Plus
the first
two.
128,000.
there's 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I got it. Okay, so it is 3. Got it. Okay, now I see that. How many modules do we have?
Ooh, I am at my computer and I can look that up. I don't have that off the top of my head, but if you have other questions, I'll answer it. And
All right.
while
While you're looking at,
yep, I'll see if I
and do you
can't
have
find it.
a ballpark average age of our modular fleet?
Let me give me 1 second, and I'll be able to give you detailed information on that.
And the third question I have is, modulars are just trailers. And if you look at what happens to storm damage, trailers take major storm damage and don't fare as well as full, concrete block construction and, big structural pieces inside. So does that have an impact on our insurance?
Ooh,
Hmm.
that is a very good question that I have to say I do not know the answer to.
I don't either.
I can ask Jennifer Staten that question and get you an answer.
That would change the cost as well.
Yep. Now, the beauty of being at my desk, I was able to pull up to answer your first question. We currently, and this is just classroom spaces, not total number of modulars. We currently have 55 modular classroom spaces. So when I say that, CUSA has a 5 classroom modular, so I count that as 5. So our total number of modulars is 55. I don't have an average year. I could go, in the last of those 55, we've added a lot of those in the last few years. We currently now have 8 at May River that are a year old. We have 2 at River Ridge that are a year old, and 6 that are, no, a total of 4 that are a year old, and 6 that are 2 years old. Pritchardville, it is the 6 and 4. It's kind of the same scenario. So those are all within the last 3 years. Anybody's been adding that up. That's a big bulk of those 55. And after that, you got CUSA, which was in 2013, which was 5. And the rest of them are all going to be 10 to 15 years old.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the moving cost to move one to say from Coosaw to Pritchardville, you've obviously got the cost to dismantle, the cost to jack it up and put it on a trailer and move it. And then you got the cost of the pad to put it on, and the power and sewer and all the hookups that you got to do. What kind of costs, ballpark, I know would it take to move a module from one school to another as need requires?
So I'm going to approach it from a different way. I would say, site costs can vary from site to site. And a lot of our costs, the cost of a modular is about half the cost of a modular project. So, and that includes site and furniture and other things. So a modular for this classroom, let's just say we're showing $128,000 for a one classroom modular. 60 of that is the modular, and the other 60 approximately is site, technology, FF&E. So I don't have a good site cost, but what I can tell you is that when we go to demo a modular, in other words, and move it off a site, that's typically in the 7,000 to 10,000 range. Not demo, I'm sorry, just disconnect and move it off the site. You're about $7,000 to $10,000. So
And then OSF, if you move one, requires you to bring that modular that might be 10 years old up to current code. So some of those would be very difficult to even do that.
Well, I would say any of those older than our 2013, we would not be able to move. They're too far away from code. There's no way we could reuse those.
So
2013 and up, we could reuse.
see, the reason I'm asking all these questions is that you probably will need to move assets around. And we kind of need to know what that cost would be. So we've got to have some hypothetical scenarios of what our need is. And that's why I'm getting all these numbers of kids and how they will flow into the schools. And then how much time do we have to accommodate those kids? And what's it going to cost for moving modules in to accommodate them, or building new construction? And so there's a lot of moving pieces there in that equation that we're going to need to be able to address when we look at a far-reaching plan on how we're going to cope with growth in the Bluffton area. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping we're not going to be moving modulars around to accommodate growth. But we are going to have to move some modulars around to accommodate construction.
Yes.
I do see that coming in the future. So,
But I'm not sure who we could pull from of the newer ones. They're already at the higher growth areas that are going to continue to need more space. So I'm not sure who's got a declining enrollment that could lose modulars to move to another location either.
well, I do know Buford L right now. We brought in the modular at Buford L.
Right.
And that number that I just gave you actually did not include Buford L. We brought in Buford L for 1 year. When it's done, it will be able to be moved, and we should need it at Hilton Head Middle School. So the plan will be to move the Buford L modular to Hilton Head Middle School.
But that's just to manage construction,
Yes, that's just for construction.
not growth.
No.
But, I haven't studied the numbers yet, but looking at the trend lines and so on, I see a need in the Bluffton area, whether that be in the May River area or so on, for some significant capacity in the middle school and elementary school down there. And the question is, how soon could we build a new school? How soon could we get the money to build a new school? How would we cope with the growth in those areas? If we can't build it in time, do we have to then move modules in there? What modules do we have? How much will they cost? How long would they be there? So that all those questions are going to be something we're going to have to address when we go out and go back to the board for a final report. And I'm not saying this is tomorrow. I'm saying this is going to be after we talk to everybody, figure out what end state is, what the growth, what build out is of the Bluffton area and so on. So there's a lot of work that's got to be done before we can really say what a recommendation is. But before we do that, we've got to make sure we understand all the options and all the courses of action to meet the demand and what the advantages and disadvantages of each course of action is. So that's why getting these numbers and making sure that we can live by them, because for example, when you tell me that we can't move some because they wouldn't meet code, that tells me we're going to have to buy new. When we buy new, well, we're almost paying the same amount for buying a full construction. The part of it is we can use 8% money because, you know, for the life cycle of that module is 10 to 15 years. And so maybe using 8% for a 10 to 15 year lifespan is okay, but it's for the taxpayer, they still pay the same amount. And they just may pay it off quicker. So that's my kind of brainstorming on this whole issue, and just to let you know the kinds of questions I think we're going to have to be able to answer as we go forward. What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, what I'm thinking of is those modulars that I've seen at the Bluffton sites, and like Robert mentioned, there's those that are newer at those areas that are experiencing the growth. But the one site that I recall that had the older was McCracken Middle School, and I know that they also are looking at having, you know, some number issues in that their student population is growing. I would assume that with any new build of a middle school and whatnot, that might assist that problem. But I think you're almost looking at the timetable lining up of when they would be due for potential new modulars and when another middle school might be needed. So it's kind of what do you do at that site at that point? Do you go for new modulars, or do you try to address it with new construction? So I think that's going to need to be a topic of conversation as well.
The big issue is going to be, we have a referendum that's going to play out in another 3 years. And then we're going to be looking at the second phase of the full $600 million want or need for the district. And the question is, can we wait that long? And that's what we've got to address, and what's the best way to accommodate the gap between what we have scheduled now and what we're going to need, and how we can get that constructed in time to meet the demand. So it's a question of, what are we doing in 3 years, 4 years?
Right. And
when do we need those classrooms ready to go, whether it be modules or whether it be fixed base classrooms? And frankly, when I look at the middle schools especially, I don't see that we can add a whole lot, given the food service limitations, the common structure, the common infrastructure that's needed. And so we can't just put a big field out in the middle of May River and say, put a bunch of modules out there and say, well, that's a new middle school. You know, that ain't gonna work. So, you know, all of this has to be kind of PERT charted.
Mm-hmm.
So with the timing and when we have to meet the capacity requirements. So it's gonna be fun trying to figure this all out.
Yeah. So I have two. So I have your one question about, do the modulars impact insurance costs, either in the, you know, positive or negative question that we're going to hopefully get answered. And then also the other thing that I think that we should find the answer to is for the Bluffton cluster, the actual age of the modulars at each existing site. So that we are able to determine, you know, what's coming up to a life cycle. Obviously, those that Robert mentioned are newer, but McCracken might be older. I think we were still kind of trying to figure out what the exact, if those were the ones that originally placed there, and so there might be a question of that. So those are the two questions I have remaining from this topic. And Christina, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I think, well, Carol, your children and mine, I think were at McCracken when those were fairly new, those modulars.
And then we added some too. So yeah,
so
some
I
of
think
those went away.
the big ones there are at least 15 years old.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Carol and I were thinking those are 2004, 2005, but we
Yeah,
haven't verified.
exactly.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Mhm.
So that's going to be a
Or
consideration.
maybe even a little older, because one of my boys, my oldest, graduated high school 2007. So
We can definitely verify that and get
yeah,
the Bluffton cluster all the dates of the modulars.
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you. So those are the two leftover items that I had from this topic. Anything else? Any other questions from anybody? Okay. Move along to item F, which is COVID implications and possible dates for review. So this is what I wanted to try to establish is based on enrollment numbers as those change and as we move from hybrid to in-person, knowing what those dates are at the committee level so that we can kind of look at the trends and the cohorts of students that are coming through and compare that. I just got a note in the chat that Robert had to leave, but he will come back if he can. So everybody knows. So Carol,
Mhm.
do you know what the pertinent dates are that we should possibly be tracking for enrollment and understanding, you know, what things are looking like?
With the COVID and parents' decisions, I was just in a meeting and several people had heard several different dates, but I think Tanya and I had heard the same date that
Okay.
parents had up until this Friday to try to make a decision on what they were going to do for coming back in person. So I think hopefully then next week we would have a good idea of exactly who all plans to come back. I'm sure we have an idea, but people can still change their minds up until that, whatever the drop dead date is.
And what dates do you usually use for the book, for the 10-year?
For the book, we use 45-day data, which is November the 10th. So by that point, people will be fairly stable in the location where they are. Understanding that even though they're not all in the building, they're still assigned to a school, whether they're virtual or in person. So they will show up as enrolled at that school.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So November 10th, then the 45-day numbers are the ones because we pushed
40,
them.
yeah, because again, the whole point of the book is in terms of long-term planning is to take a snapshot through the years at the same point in time, at the same enrollment period. So you're getting accurate trend data. You're not comparing 45 to 90 to 135 and all those kind of things. We look at those other data, but for our book, the 45-day is just a consistent snapshot across the years of what's going on in schools for enrollment, what's going on in schools for capacity, you know, expansions, renovations, construction, all of those kind of things. So that's why that's that trigger point for us. And knowing that this year's 45-day is later because we started later, anticipate that our book will also be coming out later because we have to have time to do all the assessment.
My comment on that is, I think we're going to have to capture data at the end of the year as well, because I think this is going to be a very volatile year because people dropping in and dropping out to go to a private school or dropping out for homeschool, dropping back in, when, full face-to-face, if it happens, dropping back in. So this is going to be a lot of volatility this year, I believe.
When will what's the 90-day mark? Oh,
Let's see if I can find a calendar. If I got a calendar with me, I'm not sure I do. Yeah, I don't have an academic calendar with me. It's on the academic calendar what that is. So I imagine it's probably into February this year. Let's see if I can pull one. See if I can find one.
So are there any other pertinent dates that we should be keeping an eye on for tracking enrollment at any sites or for trends and whatnot to?
Well, and I think you kind of bring up some good points that we might want to address at some point, whether it's just in presentations to you all in the future as a board, or whether it's, addressed in the book at the point of its publication of these are things that, because we're in a COVID world now, we need to keep track of, because they may or may not have implications on our growth. Again, we don't know. This year sort of will become an asterisk year of what that's going to look like. Yeah.
Okay. And then, Dick, you had something with regard to the cohorts. Is that correct? Would that fall under?
Well, yeah, the cohort, we need to, when this kind of data that she's got in this spreadsheet, we need to update that. We want to have really good numbers when we go to the realtors and to the councilmen and the city. So we can say, these are, no kidding, these are butts in seats, as we used to call it. And these are here, these are now. And we can show you what the past has been, and we can show you our projections, but no kidding, these are what is actually there. That's going to be very powerful when we talk to these folks, because they're suspicious of projections, and they're somewhat skeptical of some of our past data too. So we've really got to make sure that we've got good hard data before we make our tour around to the folks, so that they know what we know.
Right.
And I think part of that's educating folks on how we do that calculation, that it's not just based off census data. It's based off students that we've had historically in our schools, in our neighborhoods. These are real, like you said, these are real students over these past 5 years. And then you're just trending it.
The other thing we've really got to make sure they understand is the special ed pieces. Most people my age, we didn't have special ed kids in schools with us. And so when you talk to some of our elected officials and you have what? And you do what? They're flabbergasted, because that's not their experience. And that has impact on our infrastructure and how our buildings are set up and so on. So one of the things that I found that we have to educate is, one, we need to get them out. And one of the things that I hope that we can do, Rachel, is at some point we arrange to take these elected officials out on tours. Because we can brief them and show them lots of pictures, but walking into a classroom or walking into the hallways at class change or the lunchroom and watching those kids come in every 25 minutes, that's the kind of thing that really sticks.
Right.
Will help us make our point to the public of what the need is, because a lot of these folks really don't understand, because their school experience was so much different than the school experience that we have today.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know that was, and even just the general public too. I recall from the community project committee when they were going around and seeing the differences between, you know, some of our newer schools and older schools. That was something that they said they had no idea, you know, what the differences were.
Right.
Okay. Good. Anything else on COVID implications and possible dates for review? If there's any other dates that you all want to potentially, or any other information that we want to put on a calendar for us to review at any point in time.
We might, now that the legislature has punted and they're talking about going back in January, that might have an impact on who we talk to, when we talk to them, and what we have to do. Because we're, you know, basically we're on a don't change anything, just hold on tight message from the state. And so we can't really plan any new initiatives. We can't really plan any drastic changes of any sort because we don't have the funds or the flexibility to know what we can do different, unless we want to save money. Now we can always do that, but that's easier said than done. So, but January may be, there may be a need for a review in January when we see what the impact's going to be on state funding and what might flow down to us or even take away from us.
Mhm.
That's not beyond the realm of possibilities either. If revenues fall off the cliff, and they could be saying, just kidding, you're not going to have what we told you we were going to give you. And I hope that doesn't happen, but that is a possibility.
Okay, so January, possibly February for the 90-day, and I have the 45-day at November 10th, which the 45-day at November 10th as well will give us information if there's any changes in elected officials.
Right.
As well, so.
Oh,
Okay.
mhm.
Okay, so next item is item G, discussion of attendance zones by grade. And Dick, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. Really, really interesting when you look at the attendance, the actual attendance zones versus our zones that are written on the map and what's actually there. And it is a result of rapid growth and trying to fit growth in the right places, the available spaces, not necessarily the most efficient spaces, not necessarily the closest spaces, but where there is room for these new kids coming from these new developments. And when you lay it out there, you see that this is not sustainable. So we have to have a plan, and it's definitely a strategic plan, because it's not something that we can just wave a magic wand and say, okay, you're all going to a different school, have a good day, don't complain about it. I know you love the teachers, I know you love the principal, but that's going to have to change. We will have a revolt. We're going to have to live with it, but we have to start to say, okay, this is how we're going to transition.
Mm-hmm.
That's another reason why I like to look at the cohorts and look at the gross number of students. And then we need to kind of look at where they are in an area and see, okay, when could we start this? Could we start this next year with kindergarten? And the kindergarten kids, when they come in and enroll, they're going to the school where it makes sense for them to go to elementary school, and then to middle school, and then to high school. And then the next year we do the next year's kindergarten class, and the next, and the next, and the next. So in 12 years, which, oh, by the way, happens to be about the time they say Bluffton will be built out. We might be ready to say, okay, we got it figured out. So is it going to make it easier for us the next 12 years? No. Is it going to make it any easier for the bus drivers and the parents that are going crisscross around the county? No. But we could say, yeah, but in 12 years, we'll be there. You know, I don't know of any other way other than being very draconian and being, you're going to move and this, too bad. We're going to pick this year, 2 years or 5 years or 6 years from now to make everybody move. That ain't going to be popular. But maybe that's an option. But that's what we kind of got to look at. And when that's what I want to talk to the city folks about too, and the realtors about, so that they understand. And maybe they've got some great ideas. I can't imagine it, but at least they'll understand the complexity of the issue when they get the person that's buying the house and they say, what do you mean I've got to go to Okatee Elementary? That's way up there. I'm passing right by Pritchardville. Yeah, but, you know, so that they can understand why we've got that and the only way we can get around it. And it's something I think we need to, you know, open our kimono up a little bit to the public and say, okay, we have a problem. There's a reason we had a problem. We did the best we could with what we had, and we're going to have to live with it. But hey, you know, nothing's hidden here. If the public, you have better ideas, speak up. But when they look at all the complexity of it, I think they'll say, okay, we'll do the best you can. And my son, when he's married and 12 years from now, he has children in kindergarten, he'll be squared away. You know, I mean, that's a hard sell, but I don't see any other way we get around it. I think.
Well, I think the advantage to that kind of outlook is you're planning all the future schools now. So that, you know, in 5 years, if that's when we need another elementary school, we have it planned, ready to go online to address that. You know that, you know, if you live in that area where that new school is going to be built, you're going to go to that new school. So you may be at, you know, let's say Pritchardville now, but when the new school is built in 5 years, your children are going to go there. So they may go to a different school from their siblings, what they went to, but, you know, now your zone will be this school, particular school. But to go ahead and map that out and plan it in that long term so that people know where they're going to go. Because yes, we've been guilty in the past of, you know, doing a lot of rezoning just to react to things.
You had no choice. You had no choice because, you know, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, if there's somebody with a crystal ball could have anticipated the growth, they would have they would have figured it out. But they didn't because crystal balls weren't available. So not their fault. It's not, and I don't blame anybody in the past. You did the best you could.
Right. And as of right now, we haven't rezoned anyone since we opened May River High School. So it's been 4 years since we've had a rezone plan. The only thing that's been zoned differently are neighborhoods where nobody lived yet. So as students move in and families move into those housing now, it looks funny to them. It's odd. They're a donut hole. Why did you do that? So again, it was a temporary measure to get us down the road to now where, you know, where you all are taking a look at it and helping to come up with what that long-term plan should be.
Molly, will you slide to page 11? I think that's where you can see kind of the 3 pulled out grade levels. So, can't see all that graph. I don't know why it's not working.
That's weird.
All the way.
It's like it froze.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Might have to refresh it.
But even if you just go up, I think 3 slides and take a look at the graph, the chart, you can see that point where we need things. Oh, there it goes.
There it is.
Yes.
So that shows the bit of overlap and whatnot. That's all the elementary schools. So Carol, can you tell us the colors and what corresponding school it is?
Yeah, so we drew this maps off of Colonel Geyer's maps. He drew up some maps and I kind of redrew it and put it on a slide. So the yellow dot and the yellow zone is Pritchardville. And pretty much what he drew was, if I can speak for you, is where the concentration of students are that are attending Pritchardville Elementary School. And you can see the blobs in the back. Those are the concentration heat map of students. So the purple is River Ridge and the green is Okatee. And you can see there was overlap there. In fact, you didn't even have a concentration zone drawn for River Ridge, I think because they come from all over. The green dot is Bluffton Elementary. The red dot is Red Cedar. And you can see it's sort of concentrated area, and it overlaps with the blue dot, which is Michael C. Riley.
I think seeing it like this, at least for me, it's easier to understand and to see the issue when I visually see it like this. Yeah, sorry. She wants to watch Frozen too. I apologize.
It's okay.
And then the middle school one, that's on slide 12. So next slide, Molly, please.
Too many. Yeah, middle school. So the purple is River Ridge. The green is H.E. McCracken. And the red is Bluffton Middle. And you can see the zone for River Ridge and McCracken is sort of almost identical with, Bluffton Middle covering pretty much the entire area.
And Robert, when I saw this, I said, how in the world do you run bus routes? How in the world do you do that? I don't know. It's got to be unbelievable.
One thing I didn't point out, the purple dotted circles around each of the blob, the dot, is the 1 mile ring. So when we're looking at attendance zones, sort of one of the parameters we've always used in the past is if you live within a mile of a school, you should be able to be zoned to that school. And, that's sort of the basic when you start deciding how to draw an attendance zone, who gets to go. And you can see those the 1 mile rings for both McCracken and Bluffton Middle overlap because that's how close they are to each other.
And is there still a state law with regard to how close you live to the school and bus routes?
Is it a mile and a half?
Yes, you're supposed to walk if you're within a mile and a half. Now, there's a lot of students that we transport by busing. And if we transport them using a state bus, we get charged for that. In a lot of cases, we use our own buses specifically for that purpose to take some of those kids that, especially if they're on unsafe routes that are within that mile and a half area.
Right. Which in a lot of cases, it's pretty unsafe. I think there's only, I would give maybe one exception to the rule on that, where they do have some great crossing guards though. So. So next one is Hilton Head, or not Hilton Head, excuse me, the high schools.
So the high schools, the red is May River and the green is Bluffton High. And you can see that's greatly overlapped as well.
And what's that other, up in the very top there, and I see another ring that's showing them.
That's ACE.
Okay.
Right. And it doesn't have an attendance zone.
Right.
But that just shows, you'd like to have it like petals on a flower, coming out, and hey, you have ellipticals around so you wouldn't be overlapping. You would be, have some boundaries and set up so that you can make it all happen, but I don't know. I don't know. Their capacities are about the same, right, Robert?
Or as high schools?
Yes.
Well, as soon as we get this addition on, right now they are, but when we're complete with this addition, May River is going to be significant. It's 1,800, while Bluffton High is probably in the 1,450, Carol, or is it
Yeah, I was
under
gonna
that?
say 1430 something, but yeah, it's over 14.
Speaking to that, then so at the high school level on slide 9, that shows the Bluffton cluster high schools and the capacity needs at the high school level. So you go to slide 9, Molly.
Yep.
I think it's 9.
Yeah.
It's number 9. Yeah. So this is showing now, Carol. The blue line is current
The
numbers.
right those are the students. So on the historical, data, those years, it's what was actually there, and then it continues on into projection. But that's the blue line is actual students we had or anticipate having, and then the dotted line, the gray dotted line, is that sort of the capacity that we would need. So if we are to be equitable across schools, across the district, in terms of having available flexible space to run programs not at 100% capacity all the time, that's where you would want to be. And then the red line is the actual building capacity. And so you see we hit that mark this year with the blue and the red touching. And then with the additions opening up, that gives us a little breathing room. But then by 2022, that blue line and red line will cross again.
And so when you're talking about the red line, that is at 100% capacity.
Correct.
Yep.
And so the dotted gray line is at
that's where we would like to be.
which is at what percentage capacity?
That's at 85, which we've sort of, that's sort of an ideal, that gives principals flexibility to be able to use their space to accommodate the special ed that they would need, or to run programs that might have a lower student teacher ratio in one room and higher in another. It just gives them flexibility within their buildings.
Right.
So that's just always been our target.
And that's really key in high schools when you have different demands for different courses.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how many kids want to take French.
Right.
It varies from year to year. So it's much more difficult for high schools and middle schools, I think, than elementary schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you've seen through your visits that English as second language and the way that we, use that instructional program. Sometimes it's pushed into the classroom, sometimes it needs to be pull out, and sometimes those numbers are large enough where they can't do it in a small group room. They need more classrooms. Well, that doesn't go into your typical, how many first graders do I have? You got how many first graders do you have? But then you got to be able to pull those students out and put them in another classroom for those services as well. So when you're hitting that 85% target, that's giving you that flexibility to be able to do that.
Let me ask you a question. Just came up in my mind, just popped in my mind. What does the impact of block scheduling have on high school room usage?
You want to tackle that one, Robert?
I don't know that answer.
I'm not sure that I do either.
Yeah, so I would say you've got the wrong crowd for that.
Yeah,
I think that's more of an instructional.
Getting at?
I think it's more instructional advantages than it is.
It's instructional advantages, but it's fewer classes per day.
Correct.
Which means possibly fewer choices, maybe smaller needs or maybe greater needs. I don't know, but it would seem to me that when you have the traditional 1 hour block of instruction. That's the way I went to school, and I had 5 and 6 different classes a day. And my grandsons on the block scheduling have 3 and 4.
Or collegiate style.
Right.
Yeah,
But I mean, at any given point in time, everybody's in a seat somewhere in the building. So how you break that time up, I don't think has
sometimes.
that big of an effect unless you're trying to put more students in a classroom. I'm not sure it has that big an effect.
But I've got a grandson that's a senior in Beaufort High School that this quarter, he's only got 3 classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's not there because he's made all his requirements. And so there's classrooms sitting empty, or a seat sitting empty, not necessarily a classroom,
Right.
but a seat sitting empty. And I'm just wondering what impact, and that'd be something to ask the academic department, because that may be a capacity issue.
I don't think we've always in the past allowed those students to early release like that, to go on to either take classes at TCL or USCB or whatever they're doing, do enrollment, or to go to work. I'm not sure how that's exactly changed. That's a good thing to address in how our programs affect our space.
Now that's,
Mhm.
it seems to me that part of our view on this, Rachel, is to get some academic feedback from, especially in the high school and junior high level, about classrooms, classroom size, class demands for different courses. What's the IB program? What's the impact of the IB program? What's the impact of early college if they're going off and have the opportunity to go off and go to TCL or to USCB?
Mhm.
What impact does that have on capacity? And I don't know how much happens. I know how much at Whale Branch
Mhm.
and Battery Creek, which they have a pretty good enrollment that goes to TCL. But I don't know about what Bluffton. I assume that they go to the Bluffton branch down there on 278. I assume. I don't know.
I do know there are those that do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I took a note here to ask the academic committee about the scheduling impact capacity and usage at various different grade levels. So I will shoot that over to Trisha as a request. Can we look at graph number 8, please, for the middle school level? Because what I'm looking at here as well, 2 things. Number 1, Carol, just as a suggestion for when we use these in the books, and it might be in the narrative portion of the books, because I know these graphs were pulled from there. Is that right? Yeah.
Same data, we just looked at it a little bit differently
Yeah.
for this. Yeah.
I think the one thing that might be useful is explaining that red line is at 100% capacity, that the dotted line is our desired 85% capacity. Just so that others understand what that means, because some might look at this and say, oh, well, they're good, but the red means 100%, and the gray is the ideal. So just taking that home even more.
I think it's in the narrative, but you're right, because people extract the charts and use what they want. So good feedback. Thank you.
So for the high school level, I noted 2022 was when the overlap of the red and blue line was. And so for middle school, it's in end of 2020, beginning of 2021?
2021.
2021. And then let's move to the slide 7. Molly, can you move to slide 7? Sorry. Thank you. And then this shows
21.
2021 as well. Okay,
Now,
so I
if you
just-
recall, the McKibben report said 2021, 2022, we were in good shape. Right, Robert? Do you recall?
Oh, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I think it had us leveling off at 20, 21, 20.
And they had no additional students.
Right.
So
He
we were not supposed
identified
to
no
grow.
needs.
We were not supposed to grow at all.
Mhm.
Okay. So I just wanted to point those numbers out as the elementary and the middle school showing that those lines converge in 2021 and in the high school 2022 very closely behind. So I think that's important.
Mhm.
And then we did not look at slide 10 yet, but that is about the, it breaks down the capacity as well by individual grade level at a numerical. I think it has, I keep trying to click on this and I can't. Molly, sorry. Can you move to slide 10? There we go. So that shows the enrollment projections and capacity by grade level. So that, Carol, can you talk to that bottom piece?
Sure. So, like you said, it's got the projection sort of as a group for the cluster in that first left-hand section. And then you'll see that data is broken out by elementary. So it's showing you the building capacity, what's that needed capacity, that's the gray dotted line there. And then what's the difference between those? What do we have and what do we need? And that would be sort of where you would get how many seats do we need and when do we need them. So at an elementary level, you see by 2024, we need about 1,000 seats, a little over 1,000 seats. Basically, with the schools we've been building, you know, Pritchardville being the last elementary we built, that was an 800 capacity school. So if these projections hold true, then we would need, you know, another school by 2024. And I think that's kind of been pretty consistent, Robert, hadn't it, through the years? Of that's kind of when that target we've said we would need a full another school. And we'd fill it up at that point. Then, you know, the blue heading is the middle school, looking at those same numbers. And again, by 2024, you've got 942. And I think most of our middle schools are in the 1,000 capacity range, 1,000 to 1,100. So you see by then we could fill up another middle school.
And
And
that,
then,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, you're
These
good.
numbers are based though on
The projection.
the projection. I'm looking at the 2021 and across for, you know, elementary, and it says that we would need additional capacity of 668. And I guess if we're looking at the average elementary school holding around 800 students, that 668 looks like if we were to have a new elementary school in 2021, we could fill it up with 668 students at that point. Is that accurate statement? Which is less than what the full 100% capacity would be at around 800.
Right.
So, I mean, saying at the bottom, the 186 is needed by 2024. I think that's late. I mean, personally, because at that 668, you're meeting that ideal mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
That 85%-ish
Mhm.
range. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Fine. And just then the green is the high school and looking at those numbers. And again, just looking at that 5th year out, you're talking about another 1,000 seats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's the average middle school for size?
Right around 1,000,
1,000.
I would say.
Yeah, because I was trying to remember from our.
I think McCracken's like 909, Bluffton Middle's 1,035, Hilton Head's right at 1,000, I think. I think Beaufort Middle and Whale Branch are smaller in the 800 range. And then Ladies Island Middle, I think, is in the 1,000 range. So yeah, right at 1,000 is probably our average size.
Okay. I think what might be helpful too, I'm thinking long-term planning wise, if we're when we do our full report to the board, I think that looking at that 2024 number shows us obviously the greatest need. That would be us overflowing an elementary school and capacity middle school and filling an entire high school. So I think we almost need to, for the long-term planning aspect of it, pull it back to that date of 2022, 2021 to show, look, this is where we would be in that ideal range. And yes, by 2024 we would have that, but that I think that the numbers in 2021 for the elementary school and specifically the elementary schools is that's glaring to me to see that would.
That means we have to get the money 2022.
To have it built by 2024. Yes.
And even then we'd still be.
We'd be, right on the edge.
It had to be building 2 of them.
Yeah. Well,
It seems, I mean, if by those numbers. Oh, okay. Very useful information and data, Carol and Robert, to be able to share with everybody. And does anybody have any other questions or any other, did I skip any slides? I kind of bounced around a little bit there.
I think you hit them all.
Okay. So there's the Municipal Boundaries Map. I don't know.
I put that on there just in case, you know, Colonel Geyer was talking about the sort of maps he drew that I redrew, if he wanted to address how those kind of issues can overlap. Yeah.
Because we have, in the middle of Bluffton, we have county property, and we have students in the county that are going to school.
Yeah, Molly, if you want to pull that one up, I think it's the last slide. Next to last slide, sorry. There we go.
There it is.
So the hot pink is the town of Bluffton, and everything that's in the county is in green. And there are a few properties that are within the town of Hardyville. Some of that is commercial, some of that far out there to the left, those little pieces are in the University Park neighborhood. The newer section of that asked to get annexed into the town of Hardyville. They're still in Beaufort County, so we serve them, but they do fall within the jurisdiction of the town of Hardyville. So,
Do you know how many how many students that is?
I
Approximately.
do not.
Okay.
I think last year they weren't built yet with students. I don't think we had any kids in there. They were being built. So I suspect this year we will have students in some of those houses. It's not a large number, but it's there. It just, you know.
And this is key because, you know, we're looking at maybe it looks like it's going to have to be an elementary and a middle school at May River area. Well, that's obviously in the city of Bluffton. But if we're looking for beyond that, for example, another high school, we're probably going to be wanting to look up north. And that's county. So that's why we're going to have to make sure that in our discussions that not only the town of Bluffton and the Bluffton planners and the mayor of Bluffton, but the county planners, the county council, especially for the district that encompasses that area, to understand that, you know, we may be looking for land and looking to get some land, and what does the county have? You know, I don't know what county-owned properties up there, but it would sure be there may be opportunities. I don't know. What do you think, Carol, Robert? Do you know of any up there?
can't think of anything right off the top of my head, no.
Oh, Robert.
Sure. I got unmuted.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know any up there either.
That's why,
Especially if you're talking full-scale high school, you want a regular needing 50 acres or something like that. I do not.
50 acres.
Kind of a standard if you want a whole athletic complex. May River is on 80, just so you know.
Got it. Okay. Let's move to the next item on the agenda, if no one has anything else. Let's see, stakeholder feedback is item H, and that is slide number 15. So,
I'm sorry, I thought you were done with it. Let me pull it back up.
sorry, it was that very last slide.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that.
So the items that are on here, it says distribution of the CIP book. It's my understanding that there was a cover letter being worked up on those, and that those were in from print. Do we know if those have gone out yet? Molly or Carol?
I do not know. I know Robin was aware that they were in. I'm not sure who
I
had
believe last
assigned.
time I saw them, they were still in our back room.
Okay.
I was gonna make a suggestion that we hold them until after the November 3rd elections, or just ask, what do you think, Dick? Should we hold them or send them out? Oh, you're muted. I'm sorry.
That's a good point. Yeah, because we're going to have a new county councilman, aren't we?
Potentially, man or woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be wise to wait till after the election. That should be. Yeah, but we would want them to have the books before we meet with them, with the elected officials. But we can certainly meet with the realtors before the election.
I mean, we could send them in batches, send them out to those that are not up for, election or, not on the ballot. We could certainly do that and hold the others, just because, I mean, those were not cheap books. So we want to make sure that we send them out to the appropriate people. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So Molly, can you take a note on that we would like to send them out to those that are not up for election in November, anybody that's, still got time on their term.
Will do.
I don't know who all that is. I know there's some of them that are also in uncontested races, so they could, I think Weston Newton is not in a contested race, so he could receive his. And if you need me to help get you that info, I certainly would be happy to.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay. And then we'll hold the other ones back until after the November election. The second item is schedule meeting with the Bluffton Hilton Head Realtor Association. I know we want to get some feedback from them. I'm not sure if they're meeting in person right now due to COVID or if they're doing virtual meetings. I also was thinking that we might want to ask them if they could survey their membership, but I don't know what questions we would want to know exactly from their members. So Carol, do you have any questions that you can think of that you might want to ask them, or Robert? We could compile the questions and then send them over.
But I think part of what you wanted to accomplish with them also is sort of an educational piece, sort of, again, sharing some of the information that's contained in the books, letting them know that that book exists and how to find it on the website, that kind of thing, so that they can stay abreast of what's going on in terms of, attendance zones and planning. So I kind of saw that meeting as twofold, getting information from them and giving them information. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what'll be the best approach for that.
Okay.
Carol, have you recently got any information about dates of PUDs coming up for renewal?
For renewal, I have not. I try to tune in to the Bluffton Development Review, just to kind of see when pieces of the PUDs are getting developed, little neighborhoods and things.
So
But I
that's,
would think the town, I think we've got a pretty good relationship with the town of Bluffton now for planning. They usually reach out, and the county has reached out on some potential developments, like the one up there at Oldfield. But I have not seen a new date for any of that.
I think it's worth reiterating just so that you can make the point with the town and or the county is that when those PUDs come up for renewal, we want them to consider looking at land opportunities for the school district.
Mm-hmm. A lot of them on 20-year renewal schedules, and I think we're years and years before those come up. Like our need will be here before those renewals are up.
Right, it's one of those things, though, just keep putting it in their ear so that when it does happen, they'll be prepared for it.
Right.
So I just wrote down a note to, if this is okay with you, Carol, and Dick, for me to reach out to the Bluffton Hilton Head Realtor Association just to get dates. And then we can try to pin something down. And when we do meet with them, it would serve as us providing a presentation, maybe of some of this very same information, the overlap of the zones, as well as the capacity needs and kind of what we're gleaning. And then also to get some feedback from them. So I would let them know that that's what our desire is to get some feedback from them on what the trends that they're seeing are, and also what we are seeing as our potential needs.
I would really be interested in their projection of the market,
Okay.
and specifically higher end, new developments, medium range, multifamily, and low income. We kind of need to understand, and that's their business, is to do marketing plans. And they must have a vision of what they're going to be telling prospective developers, because the developer is going to be wanting to come in, and one of the first things they're going to want to talk to is real estate folks, because they need to know what the market is so they build the right kind of stuff. And the realtors are generally the ones that have their finger on that pulse. And we kind of need to know, if there's going to be more of Habersham type places, or retirement, Margaritaville kind of spots, or are we going to be looking for young professionals? Are we going to be looking at young couples with young children? That's going to give us an idea of what the end state of Bluffton is going to be when they meet the final build out, what it's going to look like. And I know it's a crystal ball thing again, but if anybody has their finger on that, they're the ones that are going to have that. And I'm not sure they always share that with the planners, because they're especially looking at the zoning implications. They're interested in getting that land as cheap as they possibly can, and to build out with minimum numbers of fees and, impact fees and so on. And the sizes of lots have a huge impact on that. Not only from the impact because of, number of sewer lines, number of roads, all that stuff, stormwater retention, all that has a big impact. And the market is really the demand. It's not build it and they will come. You got to have the market first, and then you build to the market. And what your marketing plan is going to be. So that's the kind of questions to ask them. And we're going to have to say this is not for attribution. We're just trying to make sure that we provide your clients with the educational pieces that they want when they come here to Beaufort County. And that's not only for the young couples that are coming in with children, but that has an impact on the kinds of levels of service the retirees get. If the people that are doing the work in the service arena are not educated, they're not going to be happy. So, we have to understand that. My interview with that, I think it was the Bluffton Hilton Head Realtor Group during the campaign, was really eye-opening because we talked about those kinds of things, and they anticipated some of the things that we're seeing today because they didn't anticipate COVID, but they anticipated the slowdown. They didn't anticipate now the ramp up as a result of COVID. And I'd be really interested to see what they are hearing and feeling about the impact of COVID on the kinds of queries they get from prospective buyers, where they're coming from, what their background is. There's a lot of remote jobs flowing into this county from what I'm getting from around this area. And what's in my neighborhood coming in, it's people that are coming in and leaving the big city, leaving Atlanta, leaving Charlotte, and getting away from the sprawl and the massive groups that are possibly infecting them to a small town, a less compact area. So I think we'll get a lot, and then taking that information when we talk to the politicians to see if that's what they're thinking too.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that we should have the meeting with the realtors, like schedule the meeting with the realtors, have that first, and then schedule the meetings with Beaufort County Growth Management and with Town Council and the mayor.
That would be my recommendation, Rachel.
Yeah, I agree. But in the interim, though, I do want to give you guys a homework assignment. And if you have specific questions that you want to know from the Realtor Association regarding, trends and stuff like that, you mentioned some of them, Dick. If you can shoot me those questions so that I can start compiling them, what I'm thinking, just as a matter of how this would work out, is that we would meet with them and then give them a link to a Survey Monkey or something like that so that we could gather that information. But I'd like to have the survey available by the time that we actually met with them. So if we could just get those questions beforehand and start.
I'll get it to you.
I think that would be awesome. And I think that. Anything else with regard to that? If that's how we're going to move forward, then is to meet with them and then schedule the other things, then those can roll to the next meeting. I think we're on discussion of future agenda topics then.
Before we go to that, could we ask about the report to the board meeting on the 6th? Are you going to, what kind of report are you just giving? Kind of what we visited and so on, where we're going?
Yeah, I'd like to do these maps and these graphs and a lot of this information, and it's really useful. I'd like to give some type of interim report that's a lot larger than my regular report to the full board. I don't know, and I'd like your feedback on it. I don't know if I have everything to do that interim report with any type of clear findings yet. I think I would like to get the information from the Realtors Association and then say, okay, we gathered this. Now we're meeting with the officials. But what do you think, Dick?
Well, I don't think I would share yet the specific numbers in public session, because we haven't had a chance to really look at those and package them, be able to say, this is what we see by year, because you've got it on that trend chart through 5 years, but we need to start looking out maybe 12 years, and because that's really gonna make that 5-year plan say, oh, this is no kidding gonna continue on, and we can't just kick this can down the road,
Right, and
see what happens. And that's, that's what some people have come up and said, wait a minute, you're getting way out in front of this. You got the McKibben report. We have to have those hard numbers. I don't think we need to go out and get people up in the trees about this because, oh, wait a minute, what they're doing, they're looking at changing all kinds of things. No, we are evaluating, gathering information. We aren't ready to make any recommendations. And it's going to be a while, because we're going to continue to gather a lot of information, and then we're going to try to compile it. So,
yeah, and and I just realized too, we won't have, so I'm hoping that we can meet with the Realtors Association sooner rather than later, but also those 45-day numbers don't come in until November 10th, and we also have a board meeting on November 10th. So I don't think that I can give an interim report that really shows the full picture, because COVID changes the whole picture, I think. It's the unknown, and I would feel more comfortable giving an interim report after we probably had those 45-day numbers, so that we can say, okay, here's what our trends previously showed pre-COVID. This is where we are at the 45-day mark now in COVID.
Right, and those are facts, and we haven't made a recommendation yet, because we need to talk to a lot more people, and we need to really prepare. When we give the report to the board, we've got to have a ironclad, this is what we are going to recommend.
And I'll explain that in my October report too. I'll say that we're going to be forthcoming with an interim report. However, we're waiting for the 45-day numbers that are coming out on November 10th. And that way we'll have a better and clearer picture.
Sure. But I would report, of course, that, we've met with all the schools, we've toured all the schools, we've seen what the capacity for growth in the schools are. We understand what the mobile situation, we understand what is available at the May River area. I'm not saying what's going to be built there, or when it's going to be built, or anything like that, but we at least have the background from what the district has. And now it's time to start playing with that, getting the updates of the 45, and then going out to the community, to stakeholders, to the local politicians for their feedback and their guidance.
Yeah, the way I envision the interim report to look like is that we will include a lot, basically the Cliff Notes version of those key things that we've gone over thus far. We toured all the schools. Here's where we have land. Here's why we may not be able to use it, or we could use it. Here's, I have some notes that, I've taken at different sites and things like that. And I know you took some notes as well. So including those Cliff Note versions of our findings on the mobiles as well, showing them, here's the cost comparison that we asked for.
Right.
So it'll be a little bit longer of a regular report.
And I won't be there, unfortunately, for the meeting.
The October one?
Yeah, the first.
Okay, well, that'll just be a regular report.
Yeah.
So, I'll just tell them what we've been up to. Awesome. So any other, do we have any future agenda topics? I know that I had those 2 questions that were hanging out about the modulars and the insurance costs, whether more or less. And then
When will our next meeting be, Rachel?
next meeting is supposed to be, let me pull up my calendar.
You also had what the instructional early release on high schools and what effect that might have. So there might be a way to
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
tie in an instructional person
right.
to address some of that.
Okay. So would you like me to send that to Trisha for work, or do you think that we should bring in just a staff member to answer that question? What do you think, Dick? Or which would you prefer?
I think we should go to Tricia.
Okay.
Explain why, why we need it and ask them to, rather than go cross responsibilities of committees and asking the staff to do that. That should come through the academic committee, I would assume.
And then we'll have, I think that's, oh, and the ages of the, all the modulars in the Bluffton cluster, so that we know kind of which ones are about to cycle out, which ones still have some life left on them. That was the other one. So that's all I have. If anybody has anything in the, between now and the next meeting, please do shoot me an email. And
And
I
the
will,
next meeting date is what?
it is October, I believe, 29th.
Okay.
That's what I have down here. It's the last Thursday, or I believe, or the 4th Thursday. Molly, is that correct? 22nd or 29th? Which one do you have?
Let me stop sharing real quick and
Okay.
get my Outlook up.
So I can't remember if it's the last Thursday or if it's the 4th Thursday. Don't have it right here.
Should it be the 22nd?
Is that what it is, the 22nd?
That is the Thursday.
You were breaking up there, sorry.
Can you hear me? That would be the 4th Thursday.
Okay, got it.
And with that same time?
Yes, 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yes. Wonderful.
Good.
If no one has anything else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.